Good morning to everybody. I appreciate you being with me today. I'm grateful that you're here. There's still people jumping on, so I'm going to stall just for a couple of seconds so that we can let as many people jump on as possible before we get into the material. The first thing I'm going to say is that thank you so much for being here, and it benefits you greatly to not sit still. I realize this is a very difficult time, difficult for everybody. We don't know what's going on. We don't know what's going to happen, and none of us are in control of decisions that get made around us that affect everybody. So we do the best we can with the information that we have, and we just kind of plan to move forward and do what we possibly can to minimize the discomfort and minimize the pain that's that is coming now for some and will come eventually for others. And then try and deal with all of the fallout that is associated with that, because it's not easy. You have patients that want things done. You have people that want to get in, and it's just not a simple set of circumstances. So with that, what I will say is not sitting around, doing something, taking action is really what's going to help you to come out ahead. And by the end of this, hopefully you'll have some great ideas, things that you can do now and things that you can do over the next couple of weeks to make a difference. I would also put in a caveat and say that information on what's happening is changing very rapidly. So keeping up and up to date is a very difficult thing. So if you happen to be watching the recording of this, whatever we might say in the next 45 minutes may not have applicability to you when you see this. Just keep that in mind. And the other caveat is every area is different. While we realize that most states now are in some form of governmental lockdown of some kind, there are still some areas that are not, and municipalities have different ways of handling it as well. So we just want to be aware that you need to know and understand your local area as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So if you bear with me here for just a moment, I'm going to share my screen, which will minimize me, which will be helpful for you, so you don't have to look at me too much. And I'll get the presentation started. And we're going to jump right into what in the world do we do around the business? What do you do with employees? What do you do with patients? What do you do with your business in general? And we're going to talk about these things, but most of you have already dealt with employees, and there's some information with the stimulus that Troy will address here in just a moment. But there's some information in there that absolutely will help your team, which is a great thing. So if you've already furloughed them, or if you haven't furloughed them, or if you have laid them off or not, there are things for you to be aware of and some ramifications of that. And I'm sure Troy will touch on that. What to do with patients, I'm going to get to that later in the presentation, but I can tell you right now, what you do with patients is you engage them. You continue to communicate with them. So I'll help you to understand a little bit more what I mean about that. And then finally, what to do with the business as a whole, because most of you are probably running businesses as well. And there are some things that have changed this last week that can bring that into perspective. So this is what I'm going to share with you as far as what we know. Now, again, this has not been, as far as I know, again, Troy will speak to this, but this has not been finalized by the House or signed into law as of yet. It's just what's passed the Senate. So from your team members' perspective, some of your team members may actually come out ahead than what they normally do. But just know that this is what is out there right now to take care of those folks that have been working for you and that you hope to bring back and want to take care of. There are ways for them to be taken care of once this thing happens. Troy, I think this is a good time for you to pop in here and maybe speak about this. I'm gonna put this up there as well. And Troy hasn't seen this yet. He is terribly busy right now. And so he's at somewhat of a disadvantage because he hasn't seen the material that I'm going to put up here, but I'm just taking bullet points, and I'm going to open it up to Troy and let him kind of speak from here.
Yeah, thanks so much, and glad to be on and have the opportunity. Yes, we've been doing these. It seems like nonstop. These types of discussions over the last several days, as so many employers and across a variety of industries are very interested in what is being done and what can what's available for them. So I'll just say, by way of background, this is the third of the third piece of legislation that that Congress has been working on, and the first two were passed over the last couple of weeks. They focused more on response to making sure there was medical spend being put in place to combat the virus, and then also focused on employees that are impacted by the virus, and that companies have the support they need to support them. This is the first package that actually addresses the employers and helps, and provides and offers some support for them. As Travis mentioned, it is at the moment, it is I wouldn't say hung up. It is at the House, and as we speak, it's being debated. We had expected and hoped that it would be passed, this most recent stimulus package, by the House very promptly this morning, but there's been one congressman who is basically holding it up, and hopefully that gets resolved and sorted out by the end of the day. I'm still highly confident that it will get passed by the House this weekend, and then it will be signed into law, and it'll go into effect early next week. There'll still be some time for things to be, for the regulators to do their part and provide some details. But I would say that perhaps the most relevant item for a lot of the small businesses out there, which includes, the dental and orthodontic practices, is a package that would give small businesses up to $10 million that would really, the way it's calculated is based on 2.5 you can get a loan for up to 2.5 times your monthly payroll. So what happens is you go into the SBA or ideally your local bank, and you say, look, we'd like to take advantage of what's referred to as the Paycheck Protection Program. And this is our monthly, this is how much we pay on a monthly basis, and provide some evidence of that. And then, ideally, and again, this is all, there's going to be a mad rush on banks and on the SBA. So there's a little bit of concern that the SBA won't have the administrative capability to manage it all. It'll be multiples times anything they've ever dealt with before. But hopefully they can get these things turned around fast, because that will provide exactly the economic benefit incentive that the government is hoping will happen here. And what that means is, and here's what's really unprecedented with these loans. They're called loans, but if companies take them and use them as they are intended to pay salary, keep their employees on the payroll during the crisis period, then those loans will be entirely forgiven. And there's no interest sort of payable during the first several months in any event. So basically it turns into a grant. And that is something that small businesses, we are highly encouraging them. And we understand they've got to make a decision that, if we're not bringing in revenue, can we afford to keep people on as our employees? And we understand that's a very tough decision for people to make. The government understands that. This bill, frankly, this whole stimulus is the goal of it is to try to get employers at all levels, small, medium, and large, to keep employees on as long as possible. And so, but this bill doesn't fix things long term. As I mentioned, it's kind of a 2.5, 3 month kind of package that would give you that money. Basically, the federal government would be paying your salary for your employees during that time frame. But businesses have to make a decision. Does that get me through, or is that not enough? I need to make the tough decision of laying people off right now. So that's and that's not the only SBA program. There's another one that is already in place called the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, And that is one that you can go in today and get up to 2 million. In the end, you have to pick between the two. So I think, and what you can do is if some of you have already started down that path with the economic injury disaster loan, you can get that converted over to the other one that I mentioned, that the Paycheck Protection Program, which will be forgiven. So that's definitely the better of the two. And if you can wait for a day or two, I'd wait and just go directly for that one. But if not, go ahead and get the disaster injury protection one and get that one in place, and then you can convert it later on once the details for the Paycheck Protection Program are in place.
Troy, I'm gonna interrupt you here for just a moment. Some people obviously are different parts of the country, and some people have already made the decision early on, trying to get ahead, to go ahead and lay people off. Is there an opportunity for them to rehire and still have this apply?
Yes, it doesn't really look at individual people. It looks at what your payroll is overall. So again, some of these details have to come out, but in theory, and I'm highly confident, you would be able to go and as long as you're able to show that you're paying that amount in payroll, that you'd be able to. So basically, if you rehired, whether it's the same people or different people, you could still get there. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. That's sort of the main thing I wanted to make sure people were aware of. Here's some practical advice on that front. Go talk to your bank right now. I've had clients come back and say, talk to our bank, they don't know anything about this. Well, tell your bank, figure it out quickly, because this is what I need. And the banks, I think, are coming up to speed fast. Your bank might say, we don't do SBA. Well, the federal government is waiving the licensing requirement in this case for banks to have sort of, any state or federal licensed bank will be allowed to administer this program. I guarantee you within a week or two, all of them will be up to speed. But I would go reach out to your bank right away, maybe reach out to another bank as well, just to have a couple irons in the fire and get that rolling. So again, that is my main piece of advice. There are a bunch of other, pieces in the stimulus program. I see a lot of them sort of, listed here on the student loan interest deferral. I think that's highly beneficial. There are, the ability to withdraw out of retirement accounts could be very beneficial. The full-on stimulus, just payments to individuals is very relevant if your income is below the thresholds. Now, maybe one last thing I'll mention is that if you have been impacted by a shutdown and you have your employees on your payroll, but you're not, your revenue's dropped off, you're not able to operate your business either fully or at least partially, there's also a credit that's up to 50% of, so this is just a tax credit the government will give you, and you can deduct it from your payroll taxes. And the federal government will, and this will be in place as soon as the bill is signed. You can, and here talk to your tax accountant again. So I would say don't waste time, talk to them right away. But you can get up to 50%. I think it's up to $5,000 per employee as just a benefit again for keeping them on if you're impacted by a shutdown, which I think, from what I understand, most everyone in the dental industry is right now, at least to some extent or another, if not fully, at least like the elective pieces have been shut down. So my sense is that it would be applicable to you, and that's another benefit that I think dentists and orthodontists should be very aware of and focused on. Those are kind of the key things I wanted to mention. I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, I've got another one of these in a moment as well, so I might hop off here in a second.
All right, Troy, again, thank you very much. Anybody that has a question, if you want to quickly just unmute your mic and ask the question of Troy, he's going to have to leave us, and we're very grateful. He already had things scheduled. He pushed them off to be able to be with us today, so I appreciate that. But if you have any questions, please ask them now or put them in the chat, and we can respond to them. If you ask me, I can't give you nearly as educated at a guess as he can. So any questions you might have?
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi. If you're trying to figure out your payroll and you have bonuses that you normally give to your staff, in determining that, would you include the bonuses in determining the payroll?
So if the bonuses are happening just at sort of this time of the year, I assume if they're monthly bonuses, then I'm afraid the answer is probably yes. But if it's a periodic, maybe every 6 months or every year, then and this is just sort of me speaking based on my understanding. I've worked a lot with legislators actually on the stimulus package. We've done a good bit of counseling our clients, but also lobbying on behalf of some of them. So I know the intent of this is not to try to pick up those things. So I think, unless the SBA gets in the way and changes it, the answer is no. You look at your normal monthly payroll. Now, again, if your monthly payroll includes, this sort of like a monthly bonus structure, that might get wrapped in. But if it's more of a periodic one, then I think you're safe in not needing to worry about that.
Thank you.
There was another question, Troy. What are the requirements for the forgiveness part of the loan, and what is the repayment schedule?
Yeah, great question. I might have to pull up a cheat sheet on that, but the requirements for the forgiveness are basically that you keep your payroll intact. Basically, you just need to keep basically the same number of employees, keep your payroll, and if you've got until sort of June 30 to restore any employees that you had dropped, that you made up let go before, and then you'll be in good shape there. On the time frame, the forgiveness happens. Let's see here. The forgiveness happens later in the year. I believe it is 4 or 5 months out. But what I can do is send around a cheat sheet on that a little later today, and if that works, that can be distributed perhaps to those on the call. Would that be helpful?
Beautiful. I'm more than happy to do that. You bet.
Okay, great.
Had a couple other questions come in. How will they go about converting, if we know yet, how they go about converting from economic disaster to the Paycheck Protection Program? If you happen to know.
Well, I know what everybody in the world knows right now, which is a one sentence in the legislation that says they should, that is supposed to be allowed. So again, the SBA will provide the details on that. But in theory, you would go into your bank that gave you the disaster loan, and you would go to them and say, okay, I want to convert, and they should be able to make that happen. Again, all that exists right now is a one-liner in the legislation, but it's a very clear one-liner, so it will be doable. It's just, the details and specifics of that have yet to come out.
Super. Do you happen to know, can employees work reduced hours, or do they need to be full-time for eligible benefit for the forgiveness part?
Yeah, it's supposed to be, I don't think it needs to be perfect, but it needs to be comparable levels to before.
So their intent is to maintain the status quo, right? That's really what the intent is. All right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
What do you do if a doctor owner was planning on taking a reduced salary? Do you go ahead and have to bump it back up to what the normal salary was for this loan package, or do you submit it at the reduced salary if it's above the limits anyway?
Oh, that's a great question, because you'd think that they wouldn't have an issue with an owner reducing their own salary. Again, I'm afraid there is not enough detail available at the moment. It suggests that all the employees would need to keep their levels, but I suspect that that's one of those where if the question is asked, they'll work with you on that.
And I would assume, Troy, along the lines of that many of the doctors that work in this situation, as you well know, will do a salary and then they'll do draws. And I'm assuming this is meant to be the regular taxable salaries, not necessarily the draws.
Yes, 100%. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it doesn't apply to distributions or dividends. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
I'm not seeing any other. I'm sorry. There was a question here. A penalty for being on unemployment and stimulus. So in other words, if the practice, if I'm reading the question correctly, if the practice is paying one of their team members and they filed for unemployment, but if they're paying their team member, they're going to pay through the regular taxable channels, right? They're going to pay as though they would paying payroll, so it's going to be discovered anyway.
Right. Yeah. I mean, whoever's perpetrating the fraud there, in theory, that's the employee. That person, would get chased. So I think there will be, because of the increased benefits that are being provided on the unemployment side, because a lot of companies are doing furloughs rather than full layoffs. This next 6 months is going to be more complicated of a universe than anyone's ever seen before. So I think there'll probably be a lot of that, and regulators will eventually catch up on it. But I think there'll be a lot of just money. It's a $2 trillion stimulus package. A lot of money will be flowing, and a lot of it's going to get just sort of perhaps misused or misapplied, and that's unfortunate. I wouldn't, but I think in the end, as you saw in prior packages, not at this scale, but like during the 2009 period, some people did try to take advantage of it, and eventually the regulators caught up with them. It took, in some cases, 3 or 4 years, but they will catch up. So
yeah. There's more questions just keep coming in, Troy.
No problem. Let's answer them. Yeah.
All right. What happens if an employee refuses to work because they're afraid? Should they collect unemployment? They're just looking for advice here on that one. And another one similar, if employees are working at home, self-quarantined, do they pay them as though they're working?
Yeah, if they're working at home, and that's, and they can legitimately do that, then yes, I think that works just fine. You can, you can count them as being on the payroll because they are on the payroll. In fact, if employees aren't working at all, but you still got them on the payroll because of because you're trying to, work with that system, then I think you're fine. But they don't, in fact, have to be working at all. The other issue, though, the first question was, remind me again.
If an employee refuses to work, they're asking, should they just go ahead and, if they're saying, you know what, I'm not going to work when I'm home, no expectation, do you just go ahead and lay them off?
Yeah. So it does get tricky here. So you do have that ability just to lay them off. And there are other employment laws, and I'm not an employment lawyer, but I know enough to say to be very careful there. If they're not working because if they're refusing to work because they feel that the workplace is not a safe environment, they do have some legal protections. And so you need to be very careful in that sort of scenario. But nothing that's happened either in this legislation or the prior one is restricting employers from terminating employees. And that's always an option that you have. There is the issue, though, if employees, you keep them on your payroll and you do expect them to come into work, you've got work to do, but they don't come in because they've got kids that are at home and because of schools are closed and they have to stay home to take care of the kids. They're suffering from the virus. The family members suffering from the virus. The government program does expect that employers, again, if they haven't terminated them, for employers to continue to pay and provide the employee compensation, and then the employers are allowed to get that back, to collect that out of their payroll taxes, sort of get credits back for that over the next year or so. So it is doable, and there are layers of support being provided, but it's but that's a tough question that I think most every employer is trying to figure out, and maybe on another one of these we could have one of our employment law experts jump on and I think that might make sense. These are very tricky, complicated questions when you get into that scenario where you're trying to keep your employees there, want them to come to work, but they won't come to work because of the crisis. There are tough decisions that have to be made.
Okay. And, but it does sound reasonable that if they are employed, it is reasonable to have expectations of them, even if they can do things at home that would further the work. Somebody asked also, should we loan more than 250% of salary to use as working capital?
Look, if you can get, I mean, if you can, is the question, can they borrow, should they borrow more than that if it's available?
Yeah, that's all that was all that was in the question. So,
I mean, yeah, there's no, if you take this loan from the government, the payroll protection, I think that doesn't limit you from getting other, whether it's another SBA loan, which you, or whether it's just a separate loan from your bank. There's nothing to prohibit you from doing that, from having a working capital line, and it won't limit your ability to receive to have your loan forgiven under the Protection Act. You just can't have both of those two special programs that are in place right now. You have to choose between those. But if you choose the Paycheck Protection Program, and then you go to your bank separately and say, hey, I also just need a working capital loan. Can you loan me a couple $100,000, whatever it is? And if they're willing to do that, that in no way, in fact, that's exactly what the government wants. They want there to be plenty of liquidity for companies, and these are special programs to really incentivize people to keep their employees. But generally, there's going to be a lot of liquidity in the system. The Fed is pumping in trillions of dollars into the system anyway. The banks have plenty of money to loan. They may have tougher terms than through this government program, but there's no restriction on getting as much liquidity as you can. And that's encouraged.
And if I remember right now I read this, Troy, you sent me in a group email, you sent out a copy of the actual language that was passed by the Senate. And if I remember in there, depending on which package you get, but there is a loan amount, and the things used for, and then there was a list, can be forgiven. If it's used outside of that, then it just is like a loan.
Yes, that's right. And so I think the areas where you can use it for rent, for payroll, and there's one other that's escaping me, but in effect, really what it means is that if you're keeping your employees on, then you'll satisfy that. And if you aren't keeping your employees on, you won't satisfy that condition, nor will you satisfy the other condition, which is that you have to maintain employee levels. So it kind of works out to the same thing. And money is fungible. So, you get that money into your bank account. No one cares if you're, using revenue to pay employees and use the loan proceeds to buy equipment. It's just that's not the point. The point is that during that time frame when you've got that loan, you've kept your employee payroll in place.
Okay. Yeah, they're not necessarily tracing the money.
No.
Couple of other questions. I'm trying to consolidate some of these as well. One on which I think is a very good question, asking about if they have reduced hours in the practice and they're getting unemployment, the practice owner perhaps would encourage them to not get unemployment if the practice is going to maintain their payroll.
Yes, that goes to the heart of this. And to some extent, the stimulus package is a little bit schizophrenic on that because it's offering people higher levels of unemployment compensation than they've received in the past. And we've had several clients really sort of complaining about this. And not, as an employer, you can see that from the person who's been laid off, you definitely see it from their side too. But there is this, there's a little schizophrenia there in that they're encouraging companies to keep people employed. But you've got some employees right now who are hoping to be laid off because they see that they can make just as much without having to work, at least for the next 6 months or so.
Yeah. A couple other questions. One is, do they apply directly online, the SBA, or go to the bank? And if it's on the SBA, would you encourage them to go ahead and get that started now, or wait until the bill is actually passed and been signed into law?
Yeah, those are fantastic questions because, and that's, I think you can go onto the SBA website. We've heard that it just hasn't been able to handle
It hasn't.
Yeah. People have had trouble even just getting the browser to sort of, let them apply. So what we're telling our clients is go to the banks. And if the banks say, can't help you or not set up, then go to another bank or say to that bank, well, I'm going to come back tomorrow. Please, I need you to help me on this. And like I said earlier, the SBA is letting banks, even if they're not sort of registered, licensed by the SBA to be small business lenders, for these programs they are. There's any bank. So that's the only mechanism through which this is really going to happen as a practical matter, is through the banks. So I encourage you to reach out to your banks about these programs, and they'll be educated pretty quickly. On the point about whether you do that now or wait for the legislation to pass, I'd say go in now and get the discussion started. There is some risk the legislation gets sidetracked, and I really hope that doesn't happen. But I think it's highly likely that it will get passed in the next few days, and so I don't see any reason why this afternoon you shouldn't go, sit down with your bank and say, let's get ready, and tell me what you think is going to be needed. I know the SBA has been thinking through this already. I don't know that they've put out any guidance yet. I suppose they haven't, but I know that they've been in discussions with industry groups about getting ready for this. So I would say go ahead and at least get, there is a limited amount of funds. It's a huge chunk. It's $350 billion. So I suspect that there will be plenty for the next several months, but being early in the queue, it is sort of a first come, first serve. So I'd go to your bank right away.
Okay. Somebody did ask if you happen to know if they have frozen the unemployment tax rate.
Oh, sorry, I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay. I think it's early to be able to answer some of those types of questions. And if you've already started the loan process with the SBA, can that be suspended and just go into the bank? Do you happen to? I would say probably you can do pretty much anything right now. Just don't double it up.
That's right. Pretty much anything. And at some point, if you've gotten far enough with the SBA, you'll get a loan, sort of a loan application number. Share that with your bank and get it synced up. But yeah, I would not wait to talk to your bank just because you're worried about waiting to hear back from the SBA. I would follow both tracks if you've already started with the SBA. Very
good. Okay. So again, Troy, thank you very much. We've gone over the time I even asked you for, so grateful for your willingness to do that. Please apologize to whomever your appointment was.
No problem.
And hopefully you'll be willing to join us again next week after the legislation is passed, because I know that more than 100 people were signed up for this, and so I know that the interest is there. So thank you again very much. And we're going to let Troy go, and I'll continue on with the other things that we can do. So Troy, any parting words?
No, thanks so much. Really enjoyed doing this. As Travis knows, I've got a family full of dentists, and I love the profession. And so I will sign off. And if we do come back next week, I'll probably ought to bring an employment lawyer from our firm with me, and I'll plan to do that. So anyway, thank you. Talk to you later.
Beautiful. Thanks so much. Take care. All right, I'm going to go ahead and continue on. So I'm going to put the deck back up and just carry on from where we left off. And as you have questions, please don't hesitate. Again, please don't hesitate to ask those questions as we go through. The rest of this is really going to be focused on what can we do, or what am I going to encourage that you do as a practice. And the menu for that is what you see there. The idea here is that and I've got a bunch of you right in the middle of my screen, and I'm hoping it's not in the middle of your screen. I don't care if it's in the middle of mine, but I just don't want it in the middle of yours. So if it is, somebody would alert me to that. I would appreciate it. But if not, I'm going to continue on believing that you can't see what I see here in front of me. This is the menu. These 6 items are what I'm going to go over. I'm going to do that very briefly. But the first one I would say is to be optimistic. Never before has anything like this happened. This is unprecedented. Nobody has a clue what is or what's going to be. So if you can be optimistic through this time, or find a way to be optimistic, is I guess a better way for me to put that, is that you really want to keep things going the best you possibly can. And I realize that it's hard to do what you normally do, but being optimistic is enormously important for your team, for your family, and for your patients. And everybody's in the same boat with this. So, you know, we're kind of doing the best we know to do, but it is important for us to be optimistic. I'm going to pause here for just a second so that I can see what people are trying to help me to understand here. And I'm sorry that you're having to watch all of this and watch me do this all at the same time. So I'm going to minimize this and get it out of the way. I apologize. So I'm going to go back and start this up again and get rid of this. Sorry about that. So please remain optimistic. It is something that is going to serve you well. And if you remain optimistic, again, both with your team and your patients. Marketing. So if you have marketing going, I'm talking about external marketing, things that you put on Facebook, you put on Google, whatever, but if you have that stuff going right now, every indication is it's still working. We're seeing from our marketing clients, we're still seeing leads come in. We're still seeing people follow up on things that they want to have done. And the external marketing seems to be working. And we know that because, you know, what in marketing parlance, you have an ad budget, right? And so you're going to spend X number of dollars. And eventually that breaks down to X number of dollars per day. Well, what happens is your ad is shown to a number of people based upon the searches that are happening out there. And from what we're seeing right now, there are still more searches than there are views of any particular ad. So the ads are still working, and we're seeing people submit their names to get an appointment or schedule online for an appointment. So if you're marketing, I would encourage you to continue marketing. However, I'm going to talk in just a little while about what you might want to do a little bit differently with an opportunity we have today. Internal marketing, I will address that specifically, what you do with your patients right now, that is definitely marketing oriented. Now, seeing reduced numbers in your practice, there are still some places in the country that are not locked down. And there are still some people that, even though places are locked down, they're still seeing patients. What I would recommend is that if you're going to do that, you do it on reduced numbers than what you're normally accustomed to. Here's the information that we do have. This has not changed as of today. This has not changed. The ADA recommended postponing procedures for 3 weeks. We're at the end of the second week of that. Next week will be the third week of that. And it still says that it's up to you to make well-informed decisions. So that is available to you. Now, on the ADA website, they do post this. And for those of you who are orthodontists, I post this from the ADA because the AAO is following the ADA. And this is the crux of what I want you to understand. It says, at the height of a public health emergency, when social distancing has been ordered at all levels of government and recommended by the ADA, continuing business as usual, even with personal protective equipment, would be irresponsible and unethical. Now, I'm just going to say, I don't know how that determination is made. That is an opinion, and perhaps an informed opinion. I'm not suggesting it's not, but to indicate that at the height of a public health emergency, when social distancing has been ordered at all levels of government and recommended by the ADA, this has never happened before. It's never been adjudicated. It's never been vetted. It's simply where we are today. And so whatever decisions you make, just be well-informed and be cautious about the decisions that you make, understanding what's going on. Now, here's what the AAO is saying. And again, this has not changed also. So it's saying the next 2 weeks. And again, we're at the end of that. We're coming up to the end of that next week. So just to know where you are, okay? I pulled this and took this screenshot specifically because it shows that you can see the pattern in the center of the United States, what's happening to the east is moving west. And then you can see on the western part of the United States, there are hot spots everywhere. Now, these are cases. Whatever's happening in your area, you have similar situations. And all I'm suggesting is that if you're in a remote area of Nebraska, you may well be in a different circumstance than if you're in Denver or Chicago or, heaven forbid, New York. So just understand that it's different in different places and people are reacting in different ways. I talked to one of our doctors a couple of days ago. He said that they're getting calls from angry patients because they can't be seen. So it's different everywhere. People are reacting in different ways, and just be aware of that. This is still what the recommendation is, that to avoid social gatherings in groups of more than 10. Now, again, you may be under mandate, you may be under restriction in your area that is different than what is recommended by the White House and the CDC right now, but this is what's happening, or this is what is currently being recommended. So if you do plan to see people, I would encourage you that rather than run 5 chairs or 8 chairs or whatever you normally run, that you run 2 chairs, 1 assistant, doctor, maybe 1 person up front, and maybe somebody taking records, and that's about it. So that you minimize that when a patient comes in, and I mean that a patient, single person comes in, that you're 7 or fewer people in the practice at any one time, and of course you're wearing PPEs, and you've asked if they're bringing somebody to an appointment that they stay in the car, just the patient come in, and you deal with things in that way. And I think all of our clients, many of you are likely only taking emergencies right now. That's just what's out there and available as of today. Now, this could all change next week. And again, we come up to the end of that, on Tuesday, we come up to the end of that barrier, and we'll see what people decide to do. I'll talk about ideas around that here in just a moment. Virtual consults. Virtual consults are a great opportunity for you right now. We have doctors that are using virtual consults and are highly effective in doing so. And that process is, when we designed the idea of the virtual consult, the idea was to provide it a great engagement marketing opportunity. And so that was what was created. It was an engagement marketing opportunity, not necessarily a diagnostic tool. Okay, so this is how our clients do virtual consults using AVA. And AVA has a lot of pieces in it that you can do from a follow-up standpoint, but the virtual consult is one of them. This is what it looks like. So if you happen to have AVA and are using it, this is a tool that's available to you right now. And they're more than happy to teach you how to use it. But if you're not using it and you're interested in it, you just go to the website there and they'll help you. I'm not trying to sell you anything, I promise. We want to give out the information. But these are products that we use that I'm very familiar with, and even in this case, help design. But I just want you to have the best opportunity to make an impact right now that you can. You can see the 6 photos you get with the virtual consult. You take those 6 photos. You can text back and forth. That's what the little button in the lower right-hand corner is. You can text back and forth with the individual that has submitted the photos. Or if you want to, you can use the little red button there. Take your phone, record. That's all you have to do. Just hit the red button. That'll open up your camera. You can record a message for them. Say, hey, you know what? Thank you so much, Gloria, for sending in your pictures. You have a beautiful smile. It looks like you might be a good candidate for, and then whatever your recommendation would be. Our next step would be to have you come in and get records taken. And then you can do whatever your normal procedure right now, if there is one, is to be able to facilitate that. But at least you can have a lot of the footwork done. If you need more photos, just let them know in the text, hey, would you take a picture of this? And would you take a picture of this? And then it's going to maintain in that thread for you all of that information. So you have that available to you, and it's something that you can act on right now. The other thing that I would let you know, and this is perhaps more on the dental side. So if you happen to be a practicing dentist and not an orthodontist, HIPAA compliance regulations have been significantly lowered right now to make it more available for you to do teledentistry. And teledentistry has perhaps one of the best things that could have happened with all of this is that insurance companies have been forced to make determinations on what they're going to do with teledentistry. And so just know that you have 9995, 9996 that you can employ here, and you can bill for those things as part of your diagnostic process. And so HIPAA is relaxed, so you can use FaceTime, you can use Zoom like we're using right here, and not be worried that that's going to be a HIPAA problem. The little thing that just popped into your screen there, that is a chat bot. It's called Ginger. It's a great way for you to be able to just quickly communicate with people and allow them an opportunity to work through a bot process so that you get information that you need, so that when you're responding to emergency situations, you can be very succinct in your ability to do that and not have to necessarily always be there and be on call. So just a way for you to get some information. It's in the chat area, is the link to that and other things there, so you can access it if you wish. Future scheduling. This is a big question right now. What do we do with our future schedule? Here's what I'm recommending. You pick a date, whatever that date is. Some people, like we have some of our clients that are going back April 1, or at least that's what their intention is. We'll see what happens over the weekend, but their intention is to go back on April 1st. Some are going back April 16th. Some are going back June 1, whatever that date is, pick that date. And then what I'm recommending is, in your scheduling process, I'm going to ask you, don't schedule your existing patient base. Don't get them in the schedule first. Take your first couple of days, maybe even, depending on what your load is, take your first few days and schedule your new patient consults and schedule your new bondings. And schedule them in such a way, so if your new patient consult is normally an hour long, you might want to schedule that maybe for 90 minutes. So you get a buffer there so that you're not loading up your practice with people. When people start going back to work, it's going to be a timid environment. And right now, things are unprecedented and we're seeing things that we've never seen before. It's going to be the same thing when we go back. So just be aware that those are circumstances you're going to have to deal with. The reason I'm recommending this, however, is, I have no doubt in your practice that you can fight the transmission of infectious disease. You do it every single day. You've been doing it your entire career. That's a big part of what you do every day. I don't really have a concern about that. What I do want is for you to put the best start forward that you possibly can. The best start forward is going to be, all right, let's get the people that want to get something done in, and let's get them bonded, and let's get the new patients in, and we might even incentivize them to do same-day starts. Why? Because that's going to be the best thing to jumpstart you going forward, is to get money to come in right away. Now, with that, I'm also going to say on the money part, as you just saw through the stimulus, there should be no reason that people are not paying you. So if you already have people contracted, and I realize that some may take advantage of this, they may already have contacted the office and say, you know what, we can't afford to pay right now. Yeah, that's probably not the case for most of the people that you have under treatment, that you already have contracts on. So I would continue your billing process as you normally would. And from a scheduling standpoint, I would take those first few days. Number one, make yourself extraordinarily available over those first few days and fill your schedule with new starts and new patient consults, okay? This is a great time for you to prepare as well. And when you think about what is it that we're going to prepare for, I'm going to give you a few ideas here that you might want to consider doing while you have this time. One of the things that I've always contended with over the course of my career in dealing with practices and dealing especially with doctors is that they say, you know, we just don't have time to do the training we need to do. Well, now you have the time. And as you learned earlier, now you can expect things of your team for them to get the training that they need. So you have the opportunity to train people. And one of the things that I'm going to say that you really want to do is engage. When I say train people, I mean, yes, your team, but you can also begin to train your patients. You can also work with them and help them to understand what's going on and what you're doing about it. So what I'm going to suggest is that in these opportunities with your marketing, I'm going to suggest that you use more of a funnel process. Okay, now that's a marketing term, but I want you to think of it very much in the terms of a funnel that we're going to start big and we're going to narrow down. So for an example, rather than doing direct response in the way that says, okay, I want you to make an appointment to see me, okay, which is what most marketing is. Hey, make an appointment to see me, or call the office, or something like that. But that's what you're doing. You're looking for that appointment. But rather than to look for that appointment right now where you can't really fulfill it, you might want to consider broadening that out a little bit and saying, hey, would you love some information? Would you love some information about why, if you're considering orthodontic treatment, why you should have an orthodontist do that? If you're considering to have this done, dental implants, why you want to do that? Or if you're considering this, why you want to do that? So start with the larger context, and then from there, move down to, hey, you might want to consider our office. Here's the benefits we have for you. And then, hey, you might want to consider our doctor. Here's what's great about them. And then you get to make an appointment. Okay, so you're using a funnel process and starting with a larger context of information and then narrowing from there. Just like you, there's a whole lot of people out there right now that have more time on their hands than they're accustomed to. So they are searching, believe me, they are searching and looking for things. If you have things to give them, it will be very beneficial. Now, we say in a written form or in a video form, you can do these things. You know, for our clients, we have like a book that is already written. For our clients, we say, okay, go modify the book. Just make it sound like you. Do the forward, do the first few paragraphs of every chapter, and make sure you look in there and make sure there's nothing you don't object to in the book. And then we'll create the cover for you, and you can become the local expert on orthodontics in your area. And so it just provides an opportunity to do that big piece. Now, you don't need something like that. You can do a brochure, you can do a white paper, for heaven's sakes, and just get the information out there. It's a great time for you to educate people as to the specialty that you have and why they may want to avail themselves to it. Just a great time for you to consider things in that way, okay? Now, what do we think about for after? What I call team energy training is critical. What truly helps within the practice more than anything else is when the team has energy. There's a lot of pieces to that. But what I'm suggesting is, if you know anything about me, you know that everything that I talk about is around experience, because everything's about the experience. So whether somebody chooses to make an appointment, it's based on experience. Whether somebody chooses to start treatment, it's based on the experience. Everything is on the experience. Well, one of the largest influencers of that experience is your team. And so do you have everybody on board with your team? And if not, this is a good time for you to train them, okay? So we train on things like this. Okay, what can we do before the appointment? You can do things that if you do them and do them consistently and do them well, it can alter that no-show rate of yours. Everybody has a no-show rate, right? And in that no-show rate, there are a bunch of things that are happening. And if you're marketing and you have a lot of marketing new patient consults, your no-show rate on those marketing folks are bigger than your no-show rate on your referral folks. That's just what happens, okay? But if you want to adjust that by 2, 3, 4, 5%, there's some things that you can do. So for an example, with our clients, we encourage them to do what we call a welcome sequence. Now we use Ava to deploy these. There's other things that you can use, but it's a great way to automate this process for you, honestly. So that's what I would recommend. But before the appointment, if you deploy a welcome sequence, now again, we've been doing this for a long time. I mean, years. We started doing these things back in, at least a decade ago. When you think about what we can do, a welcome sequence would be like 3 videos. That's all I ask the doctors to shoot 3 videos. And by the way, I just went and shot some video for a doctor last week with one of our clients. This is what I used, okay? Now, this camera right here shoots at a higher quality than the professional camera that's sitting over there. It's insane where technology has come. But we shot, now you have to do it well, and we use the proper equipment to do this, but you can shoot it just using your iPhone. Is probably going to be a better quality than you can get anywhere else. We shot 3 videos. The first one is, hey, I saw you just made an appointment. Thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you. You're going to love your smile. Okay, something very simple, less than 20 seconds, just saying thank you for making the appointment. That's deployed right after they make the appointment, okay? And then midway between when they make the appointment and their appointment, there's another video that's going to go out, and that video is no longer than 2 minutes. And all it does is says, you know, I just want to show you around the office and let you know a little bit about what to expect when you come in. And you just walk around the office and you show them what you are going to do and explain a little bit about how things are done and help them to see the people that are going to be there to help them. And then the third video, again, is very brief. We send it, you know, the day before the appointment, where it just says, hey, we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. You're going to love your new smile, or something like that. So whatever is appropriate for you, that, and doing something like that for what happens before the appointment will make a difference, number one, in when they show up and how many of them show up, but it'll also make a difference in the number of people that start. And we've seen this statistically, and it ferrets out every single time. So those are things that I would encourage you to work on prior to the appointment. We also have a system where doctors can send out texts from the doctor directly to the patient or the responsible party, depending on the age, right before, you know, again, the night before the appointment. Hey, just looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. I'm excited to meet you. Something like that. And getting something from the doctor, that makes a big difference. Now, that's not coming from the doctor's phone, obviously, but it's a way for you to be able to communicate. Okay, during the appointment. Now, this is where the team energy training comes in best. So I'm going to give you an example. I go into a lot of practices, right? And so I see what happens. And the front office is generally wonderful about greeting people and making people feel welcome. By the way, there's parameters on that too. You really need to make sure that your front team is very keen on being able to do that, has the proper structure to be able to do that, and they know how. This is a great time for you to train them. This is a great time for you to set up Zoom meetings like this with your team on a daily basis and just go over things. Again, you don't need to buy the training from us. You can do this on your own. But during the appointment, is there appropriate energy to get people to start treatment? That's what it's all about. You know, the assistant walks somebody out from the back, and I've seen this happen over and over again. They're really good about engaging with that person that they're walking out from the back, but once they hand them off, that head goes down and they go right back to where they're going because they're getting ready for the next patient. If they take just a few seconds, make eye contact with people out there, and maybe even say, you know what, those of you that are waiting, you're going to love your smile. Just little things like that make a big difference. So there's things that can happen during the appointment that will also make a difference with this. And then after the appointment, do you do things, or do you have things prepared for people after their appointments? Now, obviously, if somebody comes in and they're eligible for treatment, but they've not chosen to start treatment, so they become a pending patient. Do you have things in place for those pending patients? Are you communicating with them? And I don't mean, is somebody calling them 3 days later? I mean, are you actively communicating with them, sharing with them things that will be helpful to them? And then the rest of your patients as well. For example, we just shot some other video with a doctor about, okay, what happens after bonding? What happens after they get their trays for the first time? And here's the problems that you can expect, and here's what you can do about it. And that's all shot after video. It is sent the day after they're bonded or the day after they get their aligners. And it's simply a way for them to let you know what, we anticipated you're going to have questions. You anticipated that you might be in pain in some of these things. So here's what you can do. Okay. So that's the content. That's what I wanted to share with you. I will answer any questions that you may have. And again, if you want to put those in the chat, I will respond to those. Or if you want to open up your camera, I'll be happy to respond to those as well. Any questions that you might have, again, just open up your mic, ask the question, or put it in the chat, and I'll be as frank as I can with a response with the information that we have today. Or if you have marketing questions, I'm more than happy to discuss those, or any questions that you have, coaching questions on your practice or what you should be doing right now. So I'll pause and let you ask questions. And I'm reading a couple that have come in. Okay, if you have an audio question, go ahead. I will go ahead and take a stab based upon information that Troy gave here at a question that came in on an SBA loan. They're asking the cost of goods sold over the last 12 months. Cost of goods sold in a practice, in a business, cost of goods sold is how much does it cost to make this thing, right? In a service business, and you're in the service business, cost of goods sold is operational. So you have your operational costs. Operational costs different from your equipment costs, those are capital expenditures, and different from your employee costs or your employment costs. So that's how I would look at those. Great question. Other questions that you might have. That's the last one I'm seeing in the chat. So ready for the audio questions. Anybody that wants to ask a question over their mic. Okay, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and say thank you very much. I'm going to stop the share here, and I'm going to shut this down here in just a moment. What I would like to say is thank you. Thank you for being with me. Thank you for taking action. Thank you for doing things. Goodness sakes, it's going to be so helpful for you because you're going to be ahead of everybody else because you're taking action, and that's a great thing. Tough time, but a time that I think we can recognize, you know what, we're in this together, and we're going to come through this just fine. We're going to be okay. It's going to be a little bit tough for people, but we will get through this. If you have any questions of me privately, please don't hesitate to ask or reach out to me individually. You have my email because everything's coming from me. I do see every one of those, so please feel free to reach out. I also will share with you my cell phone number if you want to text me or call me, 208-989-3624. And it's the same as the meeting ID that you see there. You're welcome to text me or call me if you have any questions that I might be able to help you with. Thank you so much for being with me. We will put together more of these next week after the law is finished, and Troy will join us again and help give you more information and new ideas to help you navigate this time. So thanks for being with me. Appreciate it. And see you next time. Take care.